I'll send you a copy of this recording after today's session so that you can review it. And if there's anybody in your team you want to share it with, or your leadership team or your business team, then do feel free to do that as well. It becomes, hopefully it's a useful resource for you and them. So let me share my slides so you can see what I'm seeing. There we go. That was my 3 words for the day. Remind me to do that exercise. So this morning's session is to give you some thinking time. We will finish just before 10 a.m. this morning. So do feel free to kind of put everything on hold. We'll finish on time. So for the next kind of 50 minutes or so, this is time for your professional development. And that's the key here, really giving you some thinking time outside of the treadmill that we find ourselves on sometimes in a working week. So what we're going to talk about this morning, and hopefully it's a useful topic for you. It's been useful for me over the years to reflect on this. How do we strengthen trust with our team? And the principles we'll talk about not only work with your team, they also work with customers. So how do we strengthen trust with our team and with customers? And we'll look at why building trust is important. We'll look at some kind of key principles. And then I have these 5 key responsibilities of leadership. And you might not have seen these before. So hopefully these will be useful insights for you. And I also just want to touch on, I'm sure you're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's really well connected with trust, relationships, responsibilities of leadership. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about those 3 things this morning. And then once I've done that, once I've kind of set us up with some principles, we've got an opportunity to open up a couple of breakout rooms, give you the chance to meet each other and have a discussion about what this means for you in your business, leading your teams or your organizations, okay? And then after you've had some time discussing and reviewing with each other, we'll bring you back into the main room, just ask each group to share some insights, and then we'll wrap up. And there's a couple of things I wouldn't mind just sharing with you at the end, because I've had a few people offline say to me, you're running these workshops, Justin, if I wanted to do more with you, what would that look like? So I've just got a couple of things I'll share with you this afternoon, if that's this afternoon. No, we're not going to be here past lunchtime. This morning, if that's okay. So let's get cracking. Why do we focus on trust and leadership? Some really interesting stats in this space, but lots of research been done. ADP Research Institute did this study on trusting the leader and the link between trusting the leader and employee engagement. And it's a really interesting study, because what they found was that employees that do trust their leader versus employees who responded no to the question are 12 times more likely to be engaged in their work, wanting to perform and feel motivated. And that might sound like a really obvious statistic, but there's some interesting stuff about it. Sometimes leaders don't always realize they've lost the trust of their teams. So sometimes this is about a conscious move in the things that we do, and that's what we'll talk about today. DDI Group did some research about engaged employees, and what they said was highly engaged employees are 4 times less likely to leave the employer in their business, and so they have higher engagement. And so all of a sudden we start to go, right, the leader and trust with their teams impacts engagement. Engagement impacts retention of employees and teams. We've got a much more transitional workforce with the current generation, so we really have to have an eye on this for ourselves as leaders. And then Aon did a study that talked about the correlation between employee engagement and customer or client satisfaction. And so higher engagement equals higher levels of client satisfaction by 4 times the amount. So we start to get some compounding here, right? The leader's ability to create trust improves employee engagement, which improves client satisfaction. And of course, we know that links companies with higher engaged employees generate higher revenue, right? Because satisfied customers will want to keep dealing with our businesses. They'll attract and tell more customers. So 2.5 times the revenue impact for those companies with higher engagement scores and higher client satisfaction. And then finally, when we tie all this together, if you think about leadership styles, specifically thinking about coaching as a leadership style, There's this work that's been done around change adoption and openness to change. So adoption of change in team performance is 3.5 times greater versus those companies where it's more of a directive management approach. So we really do want to start to tie up the I guess the messages and the data around the role of leadership, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, growth of the business, retention of good people, and adoption of change so that we can drive growth. So all of those things start to connect. And sometimes you can't draw a straight line between these things, but there's lots of different things that we can see. So I'd be really interested. We look at kind of leadership challenges. I'd be interested in some of the things that perhaps you're focusing in on your business today. We'll look at leadership, but just if there's anything that's a focus for you today, just drop it in the chat. In terms of, it doesn't have to be a challenge, it could be a priority. This is something I'm working on with my team. Just drop that in your chat. We've already got some kind of Joseph's thinking 2025 planning already. Francois kind of already in learning and events and planning. But if there is something that you're specifically focused on, just drop that in the chat. But I'd like to kind of give that as context for not just the next session, but when you go into your discussion sessions, then right, this is an area of focus for you to discuss with the teams today. So what's on your agenda in terms of priorities? And it may be a challenge that you're facing right now, but I'd love to hear that in the chat. Just take a moment just to type something in the chat that is a priority for you right now. Think about mine. My priority right now. We've got Mike's doing some work with me. Actually, Mike's with us this morning. Mike's doing some work with me. We're really thinking about how do we get better systemization this year through the use of not just tools and the technology platforms, but also identifying key people that can support the business and help us to get that systemization, because we've got a lot going on. Sometimes we need to figure out how do we prioritize that, delegate some of it out, so that we can really get to the stuff that makes a bigger impact for customers. So that's my number one thing. That's kind of what I keep returning to in terms of a priority this year. And it's a leadership challenge, right? Because if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. It really does sit squarely with me. So your priority or kind of key area of focus. I'll let you do that in the background of the chat. And this is mainly for you to take into your discussion sessions. I'll just quickly read Joseph. Joseph, thank you for fastest fingers first. An area of focus includes portfolio balance, services versus solutions with an equal sense of urgency. Nice. Yeah, very, very well articulated, Joseph. Thank you. And that's interesting. I run a monthly sales mastermind call with a group that I work with, and there's an MD of a company that joins us every month. And we were talking about it yesterday, talking about ambitious growth plans and some of the things that they're working on. And it was interesting. What he shared with me yesterday was that they have this really delicate balance. It sounds like you've got the same thing, Joseph, where they really want to kind of meet these ambitious growth plans, but they have to be really careful that they can service it on the back end for the customer, because if they get too much growth, actually can start to compromise the customer experience. We have to be really careful that we don't flood the operations or services team with too much business, because then you start to impact the experience and the quality of the customer. So to getting that balance right is important. Yeah, great, thanks. It sounds like a similar thing for you, Joseph. Excellent. Okay, good. So just keep thinking about your own challenges. So let's talk about kind of key leadership principles. I'm sure you're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I just want to bring it up because it's really whilst it's foundational, it's also important for us to recognize. So what Maslow, everyone understands who Abraham Maslow was, right? So a psychologist who looked at the impacts of kind of careers, work, and life on people's kind of socio-economic impact. And what he found was that you kind of have these layers of needs. And the foundational layer is what they call physiological needs. So the need for, to survive, air, water, food, shelter, all that stuff, sleep. And once those physiological needs are met, then we can start to think about the next level of needs, and they are hierarchical, right? That's why it's called the hierarchy of needs. And then after physiological needs are met, then we think about safety needs, personal security, having a job, having resources, somewhere to live, our general health. And these kind of stack. So after safety needs, we've then got kind of connection, community, loving, belonging, having relationships with people that are either in family, friendship groups, or co-workers, right? And what's interesting is, as you think about different life events, so for example, someone might have a family. As soon as you have a baby, what's the first thing that goes when you have a baby? You lose sleep, right? You start to lose sleep. So you think someone's hierarchy of needs has dropped right to the bottom of the hierarchy of needs. We're trying to motivate, engage someone who's just can't get enough sleep and they're kind of struggling. We have to help them think about, right, how do we manage, how do we help them manage that situation? And we might have to cut them a bit of slack for a little while so that they can get that physiological need back in place, because we just can't get them to the next rung of the ladder until that's reestablished. After loving and belonging, we've then got esteem, so self-esteem. So once these three layers are in place, I start to think about myself, building confidence, having respect, self-esteem, start to think about the status, maybe recognition for what I do, and start to think about me and strengthening myself physically, emotionally, mentally, and from a career perspective, okay? So now I can start to think about my professional development. But if any of these three things are out of place, then somebody is your team, and as leaders, us leading those teams, we're going to have a disconnect. Okay, so we really have to think about this for our teams. And then the final need is what we call self-actualization. So this is about going beyond just developing and thinking, actually, what's the best version of myself I can be, and how do I help to get to that next level? So they call it self-actualization, realizing the highest kind of level of performance I can attain, and the potential that I have to improve going forward. So that's self-actualization. And you can see I've had many situations over the years where I've led teams, and I can think of multiple specific situations where I've had people that are absolutely either high performers or people that are really solid performers in the business, and all of a sudden they start to drift. And something you start to notice, incomplete information, not meeting deadlines, perhaps not showing up, fully engaged or fully present. You think, what on earth's going on? And when you kind of one-off occasions, no problem. But when you start to see it as a persistent kind of series of behaviors or habits, and you lean into that, you start to talk to those people. What I've found over the years, I'm sure you've found the same, if one of these foundational blocks has come adrift, right? So they've had a problem with a relationship, or they've got some financial challenges, or there's a problem at home with the house, or there's something, and those things absolutely affect people's ability to just perform at the right level. So as leaders, we have to tune into that. And then there's this story I heard about a while back, which I don't know if anybody has ever read Man's Search for Meaning by a guy called Viktor Frankl. It's probably if you haven't read it, it is probably if someone says to me, what's a book for life, that's the number one book to read, right? Number one book for life. And Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist he was a Jewish psychiatrist who basically survived the Nazi war camps. He was in Auschwitz. And it's a fascinating story. And apparently what happened was Viktor Frankl met Abraham Maslow and started to talk about his experiences. And then what happened was Maslow added a layer to his hierarchy of needs. So at one point, self-actualization was the highest level. After he'd met Viktor Frankl, he changed it and added this layer called self-transcendence needs. And self-transcendence was a desire to find meaning beyond oneself. So actually to start to think about community, contribution, doing charitable work, doing things that actually make an impact beyond ourselves and our immediate circle. And that was really kind of the next level beyond just not only do I want to be the best I can be, but actually I want to make an impact in the world that is beyond something that is just meaningful for myself or my close family. So that's quite an interesting way to think about where we are in terms of our leadership. And then it's just a reminder, this is where trust sits, right? So trust with our teams is about connection, it's about relationships, it's about feeling that sense of belonging as part of the organization and belonging with us, as a leader of that team. So that's Maslow. And then just want to talk about these 5 key responsibilities of leadership, because these are really useful. And then I'm going to open up your breakout rooms to have a discussion. So these are 5 principles that I learned a while back. I didn't learn them in this order, but it wasn't until I came to build out kind of some leadership development for clients and people that I work with that I actually kind of got this clarity over these 5 layers. So some of these are obvious and some are less obvious. The first key responsibility, as I see it, of leadership is to create what we call psychological safety. And psychological safety is really important, because if somebody doesn't feel as if they can express their opinion, if somebody feels as if in any way they might be compromised and made to feel inadequate or anxious, then they'll start to withdraw. And that is a huge impact on the relationship of trust between you as a leader and that team. And I'm sure you've all got examples of this. I've got multiple examples throughout my career. And the one I think about is the first job I ever had. So the first job I ever had was working in like a laboratory. And the laboratory manager was just a really old school, aggressive, older guy close to retirement, really kind of short-tempered, impatient. And I got to the point where, you know, on a day-to-day basis, I was worried about anything that happened would just send him off at the deep end and just get really angry. And even though he was at retirement and I was, you know, 18, 6'4", 16 stone, I had a black belt in karate, this guy could literally make me tremble. And there was no physical danger whatsoever. It was purely a psychological safety issue. Anything could happen at any moment. It was really strange. And it's probably one of the reasons I left that job in the end, you know. So these things are really important. I think we can sometimes take them for granted. We have to be really careful how we set our teams up with psychological safety. And then once people feel safe in our company, they feel safe to make comments. They don't feel as if, you know, there's no stupid question, there's no stupid series of inputs. Second, then, is to start to think about trust. Where does trust? How do we start to create trust? There's lots of things we can do, and I'll invite you to talk about that. Mike says that reminds me of a maths teacher. Yeah, it happens at school as well. Ivona says great book. So obviously Viktor Frankl, she's read Man's Search for Meaning. So building the relationship of trust is second. Third, then, and this kind of links to engagement and motivation, is being able to give people clarity of expectations and goals. So, you know, Joseph talked about his 2025 planning. Francois talked about getting clear on planning this year. Actually giving our teams that clarity over, here's what's expected of you in the role, here's what high performance looks like, and these are the goals for this period of time, creates huge connection between you as a leader and your team. And it's a responsibility that we have as leaders. Some of our people will be really good at this, some will be less effective, and our job's to help them to get really good at being clear on what's expected of them. And then fourth, once we get these first 3 layers, people feel safe, they trust us, they're clear on what's expected, then we can start to think about energizing them, motivating them, engaging them, giving them a sense of purpose around their role. But that comes after we get the first 3 layers in place. And then fifth, linking to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we think about growth and development. So how do we help people to start to not only perform at the right level, but improve their potential, improve their prospects, and get them kind of growing and developing to become the best they can be, and start to think about succession and future development in our organization. So they're the kind of the principles for this morning's discussion. I hope you found those useful. For some of you, it'll be a reminder. There might be some nuances in there where you think, actually, that's something I can do differently or think about differently. So let me press the pause button on me talking. I've talked enough. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to invite you now just to go into some breakout rooms to talk about what we've discussed so far this morning. So I'm just going to make them I've put a couple of breakout rooms because we're not as big a group as we could be. So let's go. What have we got? Yeah, so we've got Andrew's just joined us as well. Good morning, Andrew. Welcome. I'll let your cohorts in your breakout room just give you a quick brief of what we covered. So talk about what's occurred to you as we've gone through those different principles this morning. So we've talked about the hierarchy of needs, and making sure that we've got everybody, all of those foundations in place for our teams, or they've got them in place for themselves, and that we're able to understand those so they connect to the ability to perform. And then we've got these 5 key responsibilities of leadership, and just figuring out where do they fit with what we've done so far with our teams, and might we need to go back and refocus in on any areas. And of course, there's priorities for you right now in your business, and where does this connect with what you're doing and working on right now with your teams. Okay. And then what I'll ask you to do when we regroup, so we've only got a couple of groups this morning. When we regroup, I'll ask you to nominate or agree somebody to share back what you discussed as a group. So let's have this. We'll go for just over 10 minutes on this discussion. So we'll come back sometime between 25 to and 22 the hour, and then we'll take your feedback. Is that okay? Everyone understand? Simple, isn't it? Yeah, easy. Good. Great opportunity to meet each other and enjoy, do a quick round of introductions, meet each other and enjoy the conversation this morning. I look forward to seeing you all in about just over 10 minutes time. All right, I'm just going to resume the recording. So it sounds like you had some really useful conversations, and I'm sure, like the experience I have whenever I'm in those Zoom rooms, you had to think 12 minutes, and it goes like that, doesn't it? Before you know it, the time's up. So apologies if you were mid-flow and we interrupted it, but hopefully you still got some useful conversations. So this next part is, so we've had a chunk of time at the start where we talk about some topics. You've had some time discussing it and thinking about your own situation, which hopefully is useful, and also hearing other people's situations useful. Third component to this is getting some feedback, because as you think about group discussions, actually the summary and the feedback also gives you some insight. So I'd love to just invite each group to just share back some just key insights. Sorry, frog in my throat. Some key insights from your discussions. So room one had Francois, Leanne, Michael, Mike, and Nadeem in it. Did you have the chance to just agree who would feedback?
No, but I took notes, so I can jump in.
Well done. Well volunteered, Mike. You okay to share back, Mike, and then we can invite the group to add if there's anything missed.
Absolutely. So we had a good chat. So Nadeem talked about like a situation he's in at the moment where the senior leadership keep changing targets. So he's not really sure where he stands, and it's kind of, there's no kind of context to the change. They kind of happen overnight. And so he's, it kind of affects how, it's kind of impacting how he feels about the company and how he sort of deals with what he's doing. Yeah, that was good.
That's difficult. That's difficult.
Francois made a great point about sort of psychological safety, like not feeling like you can ask questions, whether they're, if you think they're stupid and you get that response from senior leadership that it is a stupid question. And Leanne made a good point that sometimes it's not even like the response, it's sometimes just the way they like physically react to like a side eye or a look up from the notepad. Can kind of make you feel kind of like uncomfortable, or well, actually it was either make you angry that they haven't kind of responded well, or kind of make you feel a bit like back in your shell kind of thing. So that was really, just like just the power of, like you said, just literally like a facial expression is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So that was really cool. Leanne also mentioned that she just wants to sort of sit down with her team and clarify the goals, maybe break them down a bit more. And I thought this was quite interesting, Leanne, was, checking with your team to seeing if they feel you are approachable. Which I thought was quite a nice point.
Yeah. I just sort of said that sometimes as much as I feel I am, my head can be involved in other things, and actually I could be kind of saying, oh, actually we'll talk later, and not being that person that actually is making time for them. And I think we get so engrossed in what we're doing that sometimes we forget what other people need from us. So that's where I was coming from.
Yeah, really, really good point. Yeah, really good. And that's sometimes that completely unconscious. We don't realize it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then just finally, I think Michael jumped in quite late, but made the point that you did at the start, Justin, that trust is super important to building relationships with your team. And so so everyone's on the same page. Yeah,
great. Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Anything from the group that were with Mike in the room? Anything that either Mike perhaps didn't capture, or that you think's important?
I think Mike covered everything.
Yeah, great
Perfect.
job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job, Mike. Thanks, Nadine. Thanks, Leanne. Francois, thank you. That's good. Michael, thank you. Excellent. Okay, so room 2 was Andrew, Christina, Dorcas, Ivona, and Joseph. Who would like to share your feedback?
Yeah, we we ran out of time, to be honest with you. It was a bit sort of rushed. I can give the top 3 and then other people can jump in. So
Well done, Joseph.
one
Thank
of
you.
them was about that psychological safe environment.
Yeah.
And sometimes when a lot of us have been doing selling for a long time, there is that place where we think by telling the team that we do not want to talk about work at this dinner or at this situation or in this particular scenario, we think that will take us there, and the reality is they still don't really engage. So waiting for a slightly more instinctive or natural place and then riding that to become a bit more trustworthy in the discussions about each person's lives or some of the things that are coming up in their plans and so on is a better way of doing it. And I was explaining how I'm traveling to the US on Sunday for 2 weeks, and I've got a lot of that to do. The other one, the big topic was managing high targets and navigating that either upwards with your bosses or downwards with your team. And that sort of crystallizes everybody's thinking, but tends to overwhelm everybody's conversations. And there's not enough time spent thinking about, the backdrop, making it a bit more real, maybe taking the heat off those big numbers and concentrating on more the day-to-day and the team interactions. And then the last one was about thinking through how we are motivating people with that right balance between what they are doing, what they could be doing, and then the numbers. Net, everybody's a bit different. You can't expect everybody to take on a sales role in the same way. Some of them take it as a very definitive profession, and some people describe them as lone wolves, and they do typically a good job. There are others who are they journey through sales to learn other aspects of work because maybe they're ambitious to run a bigger role. And then others are just finding themselves into that job and they're just navigating as best as they can, but they're not the most, confident leading sales guys, but they might get there. So treating people individually with the backdrop that you described at the beginning of the meeting is as equally as important as managing a team and taking the heat off the big numbers and concentrating on, what they can achieve medium term and so on. So those are the 3 I took away, but anybody wants to add?
Nice. Yeah, thank you, Joseph.
No, you covered that well.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and it doesn't matter what business you're in, what type of team you're managing or leading. There's something here for everybody. That the final piece you talked about, Joseph, understanding each person's motivations. In organizations, we're always going to have that split of people. You'll have people who are absolutely in it for, this is the job I'm in, I love it, I want to do this, I want to be the best I can be at that, right? Great. Then you've got those people, as you called them, journeymen, I like that, and that they're the people that are doing the job to get the experience to go on to something else. No problem with that either. It's about making sure they deliver in the role and don't see it as too much of a transition so that they're not delivering before they move on. And that they can be difficult conversations. And then you've got people, as you say, who are lone wolves. They just want to come in, do the job. I'm not interested in anything else. I want to do that and almost come in and go. And it's managing those expectations. And sometimes it's about trying to help people see a bigger picture, isn't it? Beyond just the way that they see things today. And as leaders, their individual conversations, they require psychological safety, trust. They require, clarity of expectations, not just in that role, but perhaps beyond that into the business and what might be happening in the future. Then we think about, how do we energize those people? We think about how do we help them grow and develop, whichever position they're in. So all of those 5 start to become themes throughout those conversations that we have with each member of our team. Yeah, very good. Thanks, Joseph. Anything else from the group that were with Joseph that might be useful to share? Anything that's kind of burning you think that was also useful to input? No,
I think you covered it really well.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Good. Well, thank you, everybody. Silence is always good consensus to move on. Okay, so a couple of things that I'd love to just share with you. So let me put my slides up again. So first of all, kind of hopefully having had those two feedback sessions, also think about what does this mean for you and for your business? What are your key actions? So we, in our kind of work that we do with different clients and groups, we have lots of different tools. We have this, what we call for leadership, we have this coaching leaders toolkit. Within that toolkit, there's loads of documents, which I won't go into today because we don't have the time. But there's, for today's topic, there's one particular tool, and I'll send you this as a follow-up from today's session. It's a simple team review document, and I've found either this tool or a similar tool really useful in the past. So what it is, it's just a simple tool that helps us to think about gauging where our team are and gauging them based on the key elements of what we talked about this morning. So you can see here, this is an example sheet, right? So you put the team members' initials in this column. And then in the first column, you've got psychological safety. And we just review and score people on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 is, really low, 10 is the highest possible. So we start with psychological safety, then we look at trust, then we look at clarity, how clear is this person on what's expected of them and the goals they're looking to achieve. Then we look at energy, motivation and engagement, and that might be, have we done a good enough job of energizing them, motivating them and engaging them? Then we've got growth and development, and then we've got emotional bank account. We haven't talked a lot about that this morning, but it's about, where is the balance in our relationship with them? Do we feel like we've put enough in? Do we feel like they have put enough in to that emotional bank account and the connection that we have with them? And this is just, as I say, an example, but what it shows you is, if you kind of map and plot your team members, you will start to notice the difference between one person and another, and perhaps some of the work that you've done or that they've done to get to where you need to. And by scoring them on this kind of scale of 1 to 10, you'll start to see the gaps. And there's some examples about what action you might then take to just bridge that gap and bring that person to a level where you think it's right for you and for them as part of your team. And then, of course, there's a blank. So I'll send you both these documents. They'll be in one file. There's an example where you can see, just some key actions, and then there's a blank template. So if you wanted to use this for your team, you've got it as a tool that you can start to think, actually, if there's some action here that I'd like to take and some balances I'd like to improve, then you've got that as an option. Okay, so just as we go into our final 5 minutes, think about this morning's session. You've all got some ideas and some hopefully some kind of key actions that you can take. Can I just do a quick show of hands? Has everyone got something they can take away from today's session this morning? I have, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, everyone got some, brilliant. Thank you.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Good. That's the idea of these workshops. You have something to take away. Can I invite you to just think about the thing you're going to take away? Just make a note of when you're going to do something about that key takeaway. Just make a note to yourself or a diary reminder, because if you don't make that note now, there's this, I love this phrase, enthusiasm has a half-life, right? It does. We have all the best intentions. You're on a session like this, you think it's been great fun, Justin's a great guy, and then next week you think, what did he say? Right. So we have to get some form of commitment to action here and now. So I just invite you to do that before we close today's session, so that it's solid and nailed on for you and for your team. Okay, I also want to share this model with you. I think I've talked about this in the past, but for those of you who haven't seen it before, there's the book I wrote, which is called Coaching Leaders. Got some great feedback, and Joseph, who's on here, Joseph's actually in there as a praise quote, because Joseph was one of the early reviewers. So huge thanks to Joseph. But this model is really useful as a way to orientate yourself to like a really useful coaching leadership approach. And I won't go through all the stages, but you can see it becomes a cycle. So it's a cycle of coaching that you do with your teams, and it helps you to get better and better as a coaching leader. As I say, I won't go through all the stages because I don't want to bore you with it, but the book is a really good resource to be able to orientate yourself to that approach. There is a tool we use called the Coaching Leaders Scorecard, and this is also, I get great feedback on this, and we'll get lots of people just completing it every now and then. but we use it as part of our programs. So the link is here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that in the chat. So if you want to use it, if you want to have a look at it, let me put that in the chat. So if anybody wants to take that scorecard, you can. There we go. And so that gives you it takes you about 10 minutes to complete, just under 10 minutes. There's about 48 assessment statements. It will just give you an idea of where you can focus your leadership kind of development plans for this year. And it will give you some recommendations as well. And there's a link to the book. So it all kind of starts to join up. So hopefully that's useful for you. And then I also wanted to just share with you, talked about the toolkit, so I won't talk about the toolkit anymore. But there are 5 things I've recognized over the years that have been kind of instrumental in development and creating leadership success. When you're a leader in a business, there's a different dynamic. Sometimes you can feel a little bit like you're the only person going through the things that you go through. I've certainly had that many times in my career. So there are 5 things that I look for whenever I'm kind of looking to build community or looking to build like a collaboration, my own development. The first is a space where I can have a confidential conversation. I can talk about things that I don't really want going any further. The second is to actually have a community, and hopefully you've experienced a bit of that this morning. This is what we try and do as part of our program. So community, other people who are in similar situations where I can get that sense of connection and people are kind of going through what I'm going through. Then there's the collaboration. So hearing other people's ideas, sharing my ideas and being able to use that information and those insights to benefit me and my business. And then the last 2 are important. So challenge my ideas, challenge my perspectives, make me think differently. That's really important, because otherwise there's a stat I heard recently on a podcast, on a mindset change podcast, that says our default thinking, 90% of the time we think the same thoughts. 90% of the time we automatically think the same things. So to be able to change and shift our opinion, it requires a lot of effort. It requires challenge to the way that we think today. And then finally, commitment, right? So I said, enthusiasm has a half-life. Commitment to do something different is really important. And we need, sometimes we need a kind of group or someone else to help us make that commitment. So I just share that with you because that's occurred to me in the past. And then final thing is, if you'd like to book a session with me, a lot of people, actually a couple of people on the call here have, but if you'd like a one-to-one strategy session, a coaching session, then this link here allows you to get access to my diary. I'm just going to put that in the chat as well. And that would just give you, if there's something going on for you this year, you think, I wouldn't mind a second pair of eyes on that. And actually, yeah, as I say, a number of you have done it with me as well. This is a link to my calendar, 45 minutes. It's all about you. It's just questions about what you're looking for and literally coaching on a topic of your choice. So I don't offer that to many people, only people that come into these workshops. So if you'd like that, then feel free to do so. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That was everything I wanted to cover today. If anybody is interested in kind of further conversations or to learn a bit more about what we do, then do feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But otherwise, I hope you found today's session useful. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back. So I'm aiming to do these on a Friday at 9 a.m. Every week. So there'll be the odd exception where I can't make it, but otherwise, really want to build this community at 9 a.m. on a Friday. So it's kind of hopefully finishes your week in a positive way, sets you up ready for kind of going for the following week as well. So final comments and thoughts from everybody, and then we will wrap up. Anything from anybody? Anybody would like to kind of share anything before we close?
I will be on time next Friday. Oh, sorry for being late. It was so bad.
Don't worry, I'm pleased to hear it, Andrew. Thank you. Good to see you, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Joseph, safe trip to the US on Sunday. Hope you have a good trip.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And thank you for your positive, inspirational reminders, constant. It's amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, Joseph. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. These sessions only I'd be sitting here talking to myself if you didn't show up. So thank you. I would do that, by the way. But thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll hope to see as many of you as possible next Friday as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay, bye.